pathways and play, talent development, community, and fan engagement in MENA Esports.
Hello, good morning everyone. Thank you for being here. I was planning actually to introduce you guys before we enter, but khalas, we're here already. But we have an amazing panel to start this discussion this day with. We're going to be tackling couple topics related to the esports industry, and ideally by the end of this panel, you guys understand better how the esports industry works in this region, the talent development systems we have, and of course how the communities are built. And for that, I'm going to be talking more about the grassroots sides on a personal level. I have with me Lucy Chow, which is going to be talking more about the investment side of things. We have Anwar Shaikh, Ahla Sahla, who's going to be talking more about the monetization side of these elements. And Felix, who's the enemy of esports, he's going to be talking more about sports side of things and how we compare. You're the villain here. No, but seriously, let's take a quick minute to have each one of you please introduce themselves, starting with you, Lucy. The mic is lagging in gamer terms.
You have to turn it on.
Thank you so much, Wadih. It's fabulous to be back at Sigma. I'm Lucy Chow. I am known for my investing in the innovation ecosystem. This started maybe 12, 13 years ago. It started with way before we talked about innovation in the UAE, and then now we've got the gaming and esports sector, which is a huge focus. And I also wrote a book about gaming and esports called Changing the Game. Happy to talk about that another time.
Thank you, Lucy. Please, Mr. Anwar.
So, I'm Anwar Shaikh. I've been in the sports industry for, I don't know, maybe 16 or so years, commercializing more, let's say, traditional sports. My career spanned everything from Formula One to motorsport to professional cycling, and more recently in the combat sports and Web3 space, and been scaling IPs and startups for the past few years. I'm really excited to be here, and been delving into esports ever since this summer, so it's been great to share a bit of, let's say, insights here. Thank you.
Very interesting.
Hello. Hi, I'm Felix. I am actually an ex-professional academy football player who then turned into a serial venture builder. So over the last 7 years, I built around 6 different startups, raising more than $30 million across them. And now, more recently, I am the founder of MENA Football, which is essentially a next-generational digital-first football league. And that's why I really want to learn as much as possible about what esports is doing, gaming is doing, because I think we can learn quite a lot. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
I think we can learn from each other a lot.
True.
And this is why I want to ask you a couple of questions. But before, to jump into the talent development pipeline that we have in the region. Personally, I started 10 years ago in esports. And back then, there was no pipeline to start with. It was like you just love esports, you just love gaming, so you try your best to create something for yourself. Fast forward 10 years, and now we're in 2026, where we have federations, we have some government support, we have investments as well. We've seen a lot of money coming into the esports ecosystem. We've seen the ecosystem as a whole develop, and the talent development in general became a bit better. When we talk about talent development, definitely we're talking about multiple categories of talent. So we have, of course, the esports players, coaches, managers, the competitive side of things. We have content creators that are very focused on being talents in the ecosystem, broadcast talents, MCs, commentators, all these elements. We have as well the venture builders, workers, basically people that work in the esports industry that are building companies. And I think one specific category is game development, which we always talked about. We never had a massive game coming out of the region. At the same time, one of the main issues that we have is with esports players. And I think I would like to start with that topic specifically. We have around 90 million gamers in the Arab region that speak Arabic. Yet in the top titles in the world, we have like 1 or 2 global champions. So where is that disconnect? Where are we losing pro players? Why pro players are not reaching that stage? I would like to start with you, Felix, and kind of compare the football pipeline and the ecosystem, how it works, to the gaming one.
Sure. Look, I think what football does really well is institutionalizing the pathway, right? So, and I think in a lot of the traditional sports that also Anwar has experience in, whether it's football, basketball, ice hockey, all the big traditional sports, the pathway is institutionalized. You have you have the grassroots, you have academies, you have scouts, you have players, you have coaches. The whole ecosystem is in-depth developed. And I think the message here isn't like, okay, copy the academies, but I think it's copy the ladder, right? So how can esports in this region create the ladder so that every single step of the way, it's visible for me what the next step is, right? I think it's a classic kind of situation we're all kind of aware of, right? When we're climbing something or when we're climbing a ladder, if you don't see the next step, you stop climbing, right? And then you give up. So I think the message here might be, okay, how can esports, similar to the traditional sports, create such a good ladder so that one day maybe, a kid here in the region from some random neighborhood can become pro in one of the games you mentioned without ever leaving this region, right?
Yeah.
Without at one point ever leaving this region. I think that's kind of how I would try to tackle it.
Yeah, I think in some games we've achieved that. Like, for example, in PUBG Mobile, we've seen Tencent, they have like a specific system set, how you go from your country to the regional and then the whole MENA scale tournaments. And from there you can go to the PMGC, I think they call it, the Global Championship. So that is set by a publisher, but I think other publishers are not following through.
But there's probably because, just because I know
Please.
Tencent is also investing big. They have a whole team just focused on PUBG, right? So those publishers need to be in the region, and there was a concerted effort by Tencent to make sure that was the case, and in Arabic too.
Yeah, and I would like to ask you, Anwar, about something specific, which is the federations. We've seen, for example, in Saudi, the rise of the Saudi Esports Federation, which created its own pipeline, which is specific to the local talents. Based on your experience, do you see that can be replicated in like other countries in the region, or what can we expect in this coming years?
So adding to what Lucy and Felix were saying, let's say the pipeline is very important. Right now, the pathway to going professional is not so clear. And this is what you see in traditional sports, right? You have the 5 different, you start off at the grassroots levels with the young kids, then you have the semi-pros, then you have amateurs, you have then, let's say, regional games, and then you have the pro, let's say, the top tier championships or the tier 1 competitions. So that kind of infrastructure is missing. I mean, when you look at, let's say, North America or Europe, they've been in the space 10, 15 years longer than the MENA region. And it's that repetition, that cycle of going through all those, let's say, years and consistent playing that creates, let's say, those talents and those pathways. I mean, what we have here now is, we have to condense that kind of time, that timeline. You see a lot of, let's say, local federations or different institutions across the region now engaging in grassroots esports, whether it's UAE on an emirate level, on federal, whether it's Saudi Arabia or any other country in the region. The grassroots structure now is already in place. I think what you're missing now is, let's say, the semi-pro, that pathway. How do I jump from going from a grassroots young kid player to going to semi-pro? And I think that gap is missing. And going back to what, yes, it's the responsibility. I would say it's the responsibility of both the public and the private sector to mix in, to come in together. Yeah. I don't believe that we should replicate the Western or the, let's say, the North American or European models where it's, like I said, it's publisher-led, and trying to bring that in and trying to force the publishers here going in with, let's say, franchise-heavy models that require a lot of upfront fees. It's going to be, let's say, prohibitive, and it'll take a long time to get in there. So I think what we should do is we should adapt models here that make those clear pathways through, let's say, federation or government regulations, let's say have a clear framework, and then support from the private sector. And I think where the funding is missing at the moment is that semi-pro area, and then for parents to have a clear pathway, because if you're a football or basketball athlete, whether it's in Europe and North America, you have a scholarship, you have, let's say, what do you call it, the dual, you have the dual safety net. So you have your degree and your, let's say, your sports career. If one falls, you fall back on the other.
Yeah.
Right now, if you go into esports, you risk it all playing, and then if that doesn't work out for you, where do you go, right? So
Yeah.
you'll be flipping burgers or something, you know? I mean, which is not a bad thing, no,
you
but still.
You end up as a host at the Sigma stage, like Wadih.
Salam.
So yeah, thank you.
No, this makes a lot of sense, and this leads also to the discussion of, like, in football, for example, you have scouts academies and that growth stage until you become a professional player. In the region, I think at one point we had a lot of teams, esports teams, doing that on a competitive level, but slowly we saw everyone like kind of fading away. Luckily, we have people like, I think we had GK here, yeah, we have Raghid here. GK from the UAE is doing like massive damage internationally. Falcons from Saudi, but I'm not sure where is the academies of these teams, because like some teams internationally, like for example, Team Spirit is known for exporting players from, I think, the CIS region mainly. I'm not sure if it's an issue with monetization of the teams. There's a lack of maybe monetization, so that's why teams are not investing in academies, or is it maybe an investor discussion where investors can come in and invest in building academies?
I'm just going to also just put it right out there that in terms of opportunities, Wadih, and for everyone listening, there is a big gap in investing in women esports teams, and I think that's up and coming. I know we still need more investment in even just the male teams, but keep an eye on that segment, and on Arabic game studios, okay? So that's just putting it out there in terms of if you're looking for investment opportunities, where should I be looking? So let me just go back a little bit in terms of funding in general, like not looking at just gaming and esports. You know, 10, 15 years ago, the region was really interested in getting a story out that MENA was investable, that we're investable. And this is in general, that we have good founders, that there are great business ideas, there's innovation available here, and there's support here. This was the story, right, that we really wanted to put out into the world in general. Now, if we look back now at where we are, it's really government-led. We need to, as investors, be aware of its government policies, government focus. And so if we just use an example of the Dubai program, Games 2033, if you just read that document, that will tell you where you should be investing as an investor or a fund coming into the region. And what is it? Talent. You know, we want to create like 30,000 jobs. And that is across all the ecosystem related to games and esports. You mentioned that already, Wadih. So, and we are also looking at the creator economy. So we want homegrown games, and we want them localized, and we want them in Arabic. So again, I mentioned Arabic game studios. So it's, I don't know, I mean, it doesn't actually say we want to invest in like 100 esports teams. It does say we want to grow the talent pipeline. If we're just talking specifically about players, maybe those players then are recruited away from the region. We don't want that. We want to keep them. But so I guess it's where is the focus of the government, and then that's where the money should be following.
Following up on this, in football, we noticed that, for example, what's happening in Saudi, and I think other countries in general, football clubs are backed by the government. And that creates opportunities for academies, that creates the next level of pro players, creates jobs, creates communities. Is this the path for esports as well? Should government invest in like building clubs? This is an open question, of course, for anyone.
Um, Look, I think it brings pros and cons, right? And I think one of the cons we might even see right now. I think there's a little bit of a situation in Saudi, right, where the government has 4 big teams, right, and they're kind of complaining about certain preferences among the teams, right?
Yeah.
Where if a government starts to invest in sports and specifically clubs, that can happen, right? So you really have to be careful that there's no, narrative of, yeah, we are the favorites, we get more money than the other team and so on. Because if a government is involved, it needs to be fair, right? Across all teams. I think I wanted to actually also go back on one point that Lucy said, which was, I think, especially when it comes to governments being involved here, I think the homegrown element is really the biggest sell to them, right? I think the region here in sports, but also esports, has always been a distribution market, right? And I'm quite vocal about this also when I'm speaking to my investors and so on. Like, I think this region is ready to become a creator market and not a distribution market. Stop importing stuff, stop copying stuff, stop, taking things from other regions. You have a strong government, you have a strong support system, you have talented founders here. Build your own stuff. And it's such a beautiful story when you can say that it's homegrown, that it's from this region. It's born in Dubai, it's born in Riyadh, it's born in Beirut, wherever it is, right? And I think when governments start to understand that, then they might also start to see the positive side of investing into clubs and into esports and into all of the whole chain that happens after that, right?
I think just to add on top of what both of you said and what I iterated before is, I think, yes, there should be government funding in there, but it should be addressed to the sectors that are missing the gaps, right? So we said the grassroots is there. It's the semi-pro division that is lacking. That gap from going grassroots to pro needs some injection of capital to push it. Then, like you said, the academies should be there. So yes, there should be programs in there to subsidize, to help, to invest in, to let's say, elevate the whole ecosystem. And you do see that already in place with the Esports World Cup in Saudi. They do have a fund for the clubs and for the teams. So outside of the massive prize pool, there is, the clubs get to support to continue and to, participate in there. And I think that's one of the biggest gaps there. And then the ecosystem, what it's missing here is you need year-round competition. You don't need big one-off events. So you need that repetition, that weekly, monthly, quarterly. That will develop the ecosystem, and that will encourage investors to come in because they can see sustainability. And what investors need to see as well is they need to see a clear pathway between all the different levels. Right now, there's missing gaps, and not all the levels need to be profitable from day one for an investor to come in. But if there's a clear pathway and a linkage between the different tiers of the ecosystem, then investment would come in from different angles, both from public and private sectors.
Yeah.
And my very quick answer, I talked about national agenda. We cannot have a national agenda and not have the government also invest. And it might look like different ways of investing.
No, definitely.
And sorry, one last point on this. I think, especially here in the region, over the next 3 to 5 years, I don't think the event or the system that's the loudest will win. Right? Because I think here in the region, sometimes they love to be loud when it comes to certain things. I think it's the one that actually builds the biggest depth. So like Anwar said, right? Build the system, build the depth. Don't make it one-off event based, but make it system-based, right? So don't focus on just one event and make that huge, but think about the system behind it, right?
Yes. One of the things I always discussed with clients, brands, people that I work with that want to enter the gaming industry is like, you don't want to just get like 10 million views and not have like a loyal community behind whatever you're doing. And I think the idea of building a community behind anything, whether it is like competitive esports, entertainment, general gaming, if you have a game, you need a community for it at the end of the day. Not just players that will come play for like 1 week and then the hype is gone and then the game shuts down, right? So when it comes to communities, could this be the next trend for investors to be jumping into? Because we heard like a lot of discussions about like creator economy and backing content creators. But I think like specific communities, and for people that are not very involved in gaming, we have like GTA 5 communities, which are like Discord servers with their own servers. They actually some of the best streamers in the Arab region. The top 20, I think, are like GTA. Isn't this like a good idea to invest in like building a server?
Okay, very quickly. Not only it's going down to micro communities.
Yes.
So I love the GTA example, but I'm going to take it back to our regional culture, where it might be a very specific community somewhere in Saudi that's playing a very specific game. I mean, this is happening across all IP, not just games, right? Music, videos, all across. And so this is where people are going to be investing in, and investors are going to look at cross IP, right? So maybe investing in a really good game, but then how do I make sure that community that I've tapped into will follow me? I want to make sure it's sticky, so I'm going to have maybe game podcasts, maybe I'm going to have some video content, maybe I have music tied to it. So look at cross IP micro communities.
As someone that's building a digital community, Felix, what are like the best practices you have experienced so far?
Best practices. Look, I think we try to see grassroots as a core partner, right? As a core embedded element of our business model. I think a lot of, and I'm speaking from traditional sports, right? A lot of traditional sports see grassroots and the community as like a social project. Like, oh yeah, this is just like a social prod. Like, you know, the kids, they play on a Sunday, whatever, but they're not really giving us money, right? But I think if you start to think of it more as an integrated part of your business, where if you host, I don't know, coming again to football, when you host weekly neighborhood tournaments, when you host matchups, challenges, and you might find a talented player and give him the opportunity next week to play with the pros, right? Like, you're kind of integrating grassroots with semi-pro, with pro, creating that whole cross-culture element, which I think that is a best practice, and I think I've seen some really good IPs do that around the world. But yeah, that's maybe something that would come to my mind.
Last question before our time runs out. Anwar, when it comes to communities, how do you actually monetize it in a good way? Because at the end of the day, if you're doing something, even if it's like, oh, this is the best cause or the best thing to do, if you don't have a proper revenue stream behind it, you cannot sustain it and it doesn't go anywhere. So how do you ideally monetize communities and maybe content in general, I guess?
So I think, I mean, if you're in the esports world, one of the biggest, let's say, questions is how do you monetize it? And
yes.
I think up until now, no one...
It's always sponsorship right now, right?
No one's cracked the code. So if I do spill it out, you all need to pay me a licensing fee. But so, I mean, the landscape is quite complicated. It's different from traditional sports, right? Where in esports, it's all publisher driven. Where in traditional sports, it's, let's say, federation driven. So in football, you have FIFA, you have FIA and motorsport and so on. But in esports, every publisher has its own community and it's ring-fenced, right? And only the publisher is monetizing it. So how do people get involved outside of the, let's say, the publisher's realm? And this is where we're seeing, you know, innovation in the region. And I think this is where we're standing out. You have the Esports World Cup, you have the Dubai, you know, esports festivals. Yes. So, and this is one of our biggest strengths here is, you know, we have festival, culture and destination-driven events, all compacted into one. So when you go to the Esports Festival, you have the community, you have 7 weeks of games, you have concerts, you have culture experiences, and I mean, this is where the community comes in. And then bringing it down, let's say monetizing content is the most trickiest part because the whole, let's say, ecosystem, all fans have become accustomed to free content. So the minute you put on a fee, you lose the subscription fee. People get upset, and you know you'll get a riot online. But I think for people, let's say for platforms to monetize that is really what do you offer for that fee? What's that premium that you get for that fee? And this is the key differentiator between the winners and the losers. And we're seeing it. The subscription model works. So if you have something that's premium, has status, and I think status plays a big role in esports as well. You can sell a subscription to that. But the community as well, sponsorship is one, but then along with that, you have the live experiences, you have academies, education, institutional events. So there is a whole blend of items, let's say, pillars that can go out to help monetize it. But I think it takes, let's say, a concerted effort to get these communities monetized and outside of the publishers' realms. And that's something that the MENA has hacked at the moment, which is through all these festivals that stretch out many, many weeks. But I think what we need to see that is stretched out over the course of a year to really get it, the engine running.
Yes, I fully agree with you. As a person that works a lot with content creators and events in general, I hate it when I see like one event spends like $500,000 on content creators for like 1 month and then nothing all year long. But in all cases, I would love to talk more about this. However, our time is up for today. If anyone has any questions, please, you can catch the panelists on our way out of here. And it was a pleasure discussing this with you. Maybe we'll need a podcast version, Sigma guys. You need to give us more time next time. No, but thank you, everyone, and hope you enjoyed this panel.